I think it risks significant fallout for sure. First of all, it's not a tariff. A tariff is something that is used to protect domestic manufacturing. So, not only do we really have not much in the way of domestic manufacturing, this isn't a tariff. This is a sanction that is masquerading as a tariff. And I think honestly that a short-term show of strength versus the long-term consequences, I think the consequences greatly outweigh the benefits. And to me, it's impractical, it's counterproductive. I mean, what happened to diplomacy or strategic alliances or targeted economic sanctions rather than broad economic sanctions? And not only that, when you talk about, the BRICS countries, they are massive, significant suppliers of critical elements that we need: energy, raw materials, rare earths, pharmaceuticals, electronics, and that's you're already seeing Xi Jinping start to limit the amount of rare earths that he will now sell into the United States, or putting a moratorium on it. It will create a trade war. And furthermore, I think, look, the BRICS represent a very significant share of the global economy, as is not only in GDP, but human population and many other metrics. I think it's silly. I think it's the wrong message. I mean, look, he is the master of the deal, so maybe he's starting with a bar much higher and intends on lowering it. But I don't think after the 4 years of really horrible diplomacy and doing all the things that we've done to damage our reputation, as optimistic as the environment is surrounding Trump and what he could do for this country, I think it sends the wrong message and will only double down, I think, these countries' resolve to de-dollarize and to do so in a much more opaque manner. You can see these central banks have been accumulating gold hand over fist, even though they're not reporting it. China says, I know you're going to ask me about China saying, well, we're going to start buying it again after a 6-month moratorium, but they haven't taken any time off. The import-export numbers out of Switzerland and the UK betray that rhetoric. And by the same token, 78% of all the silver they're using right now in industry is coming as a byproduct of concentrate. And I've talked on your show about how they're flying all around South America. I've received this in terms of a validation from two mining execs who have said, yeah, they're going around South America. They're buying the concentrate and the doré bars at up to twice what the West will pay, disintermediating the marketplace so it's not recorded. It doesn't affect the price, sending it back to China for it to be refined. So they're making efforts to de-dollarize that are less than forthright in terms of reporting gold acquisitions to the IMF. And this will just make them double down not only on their desire to de-dollarize, but in the way that they probably are less than forthright about all sorts of things dollar related, including the acquisition of natural resources. Today was a bad day for the stock market, but in just about every single metric right now, you guys, in just about every single metric, the market is massively overvalued. I mean, literally, it's the everything bubble. And, whether it be the Buffett indicator, where the stock market grows faster than the economy, basically what we're seeing right now. And currently the Buffett indicator is at 206, which is 142% above its long-term average of 85, going back to 1971. You can talk about the price to sales ratio on the S&P 500. It's basically saying that it's the most overvalued market relative to its total sales maybe ever. I mean, it goes way, way back. And when you talk about the insider selling, it's 6-1 right now. You have 6 insider sales for every 1 insider purchase. And that's not a good thing. Jeff Bezos has already sold, just in this year alone, 12.5 billion worth of Amazon. Just last week, he did 1.25 billion. Zuckerberg is up to 2.4 billion. Last week, 153 million more of Meta stock. And the insiders with NVIDIA have sold almost 2 billion year to date. And so as corporate execs are cashing out, individual investors have never been more bullish. In fact, recent poll says 46% of investors see a 10% less chance of a market crash. And this is the highest percentage since 2006. So yeah, I mean, it's ominous for sure to see the insiders bailing and the market at all-time high valuations, the euphoria surrounding the Trump risk-on trade. And at the same time, the insiders are quietly tiptoeing out the exits in the middle of this party with all the streamers and confetti going up in the air. They're doing the Irish goodbye. And so I think that's something people should be paying close attention to as we get close to the end of the year here. Everything that's happening with Russia, this is the absolute worst possible message that could be sent. Talking about stationing nuclear warheads in the Ukraine, giving them long-range missiles that are traveling into the heart of Russia that are American made, and the technology behind them speaks to American assistance, which is it's crazy. I mean, it truly is crazy, and it's not just the stupidity in terms of geopolitical. I mean, the first 2 months or last 2 months rather, represent, and you're talking October, November, would represent the first 2 months of the 2025 fiscal calendar for the government that Trump is going to inherit. And they spent $584.2 billion in the first 2 months. That is the highest deficit ever in the history of this country for the first 2 months. It's insanity. We didn't spend that kind of money, 584 billion, on a deficit for a whole year until 2009, and now we did it in the first 2 months. The worst start to a year for the U.S. Treasury in the history of this country, and that's the economy that he is going to inherit. So whether you talk about the geopolitical blunders, and it's not him pulling the strings, who is continually sending more and more money to the Ukraine and arms and military assistance and doing things that are very provocative and provoking. At the same time, spending money like it does not matter. And then the stupidity of selling the border wall for, pennies on the dollar that we paid for. It's like eighth grade tit for tat. You can't make it up. And when you talk about everything that's happened with this administration, like even the drones that they don't tell us anything about. I mean, obviously they're not overly concerned about it. The military obviously knows what they are, but to create this sense of anxiety to the public is ridiculous. It's just as ridiculous as lying to the public and pardoning his son. Any of us who are fathers understand the desire to do it, but be open about it. At the same time, you could have pardoned Trump and all of this could have been behind us. Just say, well, this is over, this infighting, it's over. Let's all get along, we're Americans, blah, blah, blah. No, instead he does more of the same. And then you get Lindsey Graham, who comes out publicly. See if I can actually, I don't know if I can find it. Yeah, here it is. So let me just read something to you. I may have read it last week. I'm not sure, but this to me exemplifies, when you asked me that question, to me, what I heard Lindsey Graham say and read on Sean Hannity is exactly what you're talking about. And it's just wrong. And he says that the war in Ukraine has been all about money and only about money. He told Sean Hannity that the U.S. stands to financially gain from Ukraine's vast agricultural sector and $2 to $7 trillion worth of rare earth minerals alike in a prospective wartime deal with the war-torn, albeit resource-wealthy nation. This war is all about money. People don't talk much about it, but the richest country in all of Europe for rare earth minerals is the Ukraine. $2 to $7 trillion worth of minerals that are rare earth minerals, very relevant to the 21st century, Graham declared. Ukraine's ready to do a deal with us, not the Russians, so it's in our interest to make sure Russia doesn't take over the place. Ukraine is the breadbasket of the developing world, Graham said. 50% of all the food going to Africa comes from the Ukraine. Here's the kicker. Graham also emphasized that the incoming Trump administration is uniquely positioned to cash out on such resources. Trump is going to do a deal to get our money back, to enrich ourselves with rare earth minerals. A good deal for the Ukraine and us. And if you think about that, how many millions of their people have died? Their country is in tatters. I mean, literally, I have two friends that are here right now friends of a friend who I've become close with. They're from the Ukraine. They owned a business and they have nothing. And one guy's driving an Uber and the other one is cooking food for a family. They have nothing. So we've destroyed their country. We've helped destroy it with 200 plus billion in aid, most of it in the form of weapons from the military industrial complex. So we enrich the military industrial complex that destroys the country, kills their people. And then BlackRock comes in and rebuilds it, has all the contracts to rebuild it. We have our thumb right on Russia, and then we get to exploit all of their rare earths. It sounds very similar to what we did in Iraq, where 20 years ago we invaded them under false pretenses. We're still there. We're still controlling their natural resources, sanctioning 14 of their banks. At some point, even when you look at what's going on in Syria, it's about oil. There's a pipeline that would have gone through Syria, which would have completely destabilized, and I think it was from Qatar, completely destabilized Russia's stranglehold on the energy to Europe. And instead, Syria said no. So they're taken out, and their country has been devastated, like worse than Iraq. And we, because of our sanctions, they can't even get medical supplies for the children or the women. They can't rebuild their destroyed infrastructure. They're starving to death. And everywhere you look, the U.S. has their fingers in all of this. It's just time to put an end to all of this. And that would be my wish. It would be my wish that Trump would be far less of an interventionist and far more protectionist, and bring people home, secure our border, stop spending all this money, stop meddling in everyone's affairs. And they're putting this on overdrive right now, Elijah. To your point, he's going to inherit quite a mess, not only politically, geopolitically, here at home, socially, morally, the whole nine yards, spiritually even. The whole thing is just bizarro world. So he can't get here fast enough as far as I'm concerned. And he will not be inheriting such a pristine, vehicle as he might wish. I think he's got a lot of work in front of him.